we feel like we can be a really good team, and I think our guys are showing why with the way they're competing and moving the ball and playing together.
After acquiring former All-Star Kristaps Porzingis, the Golden State Warriors are still not done. There is still one remaining spot on the roster, and rumors are they're looking to fill it. The question is, who's on their radar? For a team that was less than a month ago facing yet another failed season with the injury of one of their superstars, there's nothing more exciting than the prospect of making the playoffs after a few potentially game-changing trades at the deadline.
A lot has happened with Jimmy's injury and the trade, and we've got a chance to get recharged here over the break and come back and got plenty to play for.
The Golden State Warriors are in just such a position, and while the team is suffering from a number of setbacks in the form of injuries, a league-wide issue that I'll cover in a separate video, they still seem to be competing at a high enough level. Following the Porzingis trade, the Warriors have covered up some massive gaps in the roster construction, giving Steve Kerr incredible flexibility in terms of lineup combinations. In almost any other situation, having the likes of Kristaps and or Al Horford unable to play back-to-back games would present a significant hurdle. In this case, however, the Warriors have the easiest solution of having these players split back-to-back games without the team losing a position they can't fill. As I mentioned before, even if both players struggle, they still have the option of inserting Quinton Post. The gaps at center are effectively filled, and if Post finds himself in the rotation more often, expect to see double big lineups more often than before. From yet another perspective, seeing what Post did when he was inserted into the game in the fourth quarter against the Spurs.
It out to Spencer. Post drains a three from the corner. Green wide open. Missed the three. Post battling Wembanyama, and Post gets to the loose ball. Johnson for three. In and out. Rebound Post.
This stretch 5 heavy roster clearly lit a fire under him and can only serve to make the team even more competitive when he plays. But there is still something missing from the roster, and the Warriors may just be able to find that missing piece on the buyout market. Check ball. For those of you who don't understand the buyout market or how it works, it's basically the period following the NBA trade deadline, the after party. At this point in the season, teams that are not expecting to compete in the playoffs buy out the contracts of their veterans who are in reduced roles and possibly looking for a change of scenery, or players on expiring contracts to allow them to go to a contender. The players typically agree to give back some of that salary to the team. With that being said, there are a number of players whom teams are looking at, but so far, there hasn't been a big rush to grab players who are currently available. One of the reasons is that they have up until March 1st to acquire a player and still have that player eligible for the playoffs. Another reason is that we're about at the point of All-Star Weekend, and since we're fresh off the trade deadlines, teams are reevaluating their needs. A team like the Warriors, for example, who just went all in for Giannis, lost out on Jaren Jackson Jr. in the process as their second option, and as a result, landed on Porzingis, their third option, now have to reevaluate what their needs are in order to make a playoff push. Realistically, teams have about 2 weeks of evaluation between the February 5th trade deadline and March 1st to figure out their needs. But considering the health of Porzingis, this gives them about a week to finalize. Even less if the player at the top of their buyout list gets signed to a different team. One of the first candidates, Jeremy Sohan, who was released by the Spurs, didn't actually spend any time on the market. Before being cleared off waivers, it was announced that Sohan would be signing with the Knicks. Sohan clearly still has a lot of value, and at just 22 years old, it's easy to see why. It feels like he's a veteran in the league, but is currently the youngest player on the buyout market. At 6'8", the Knicks picked up a valuable bench piece that has a high motor, defends 1 through 4 and even 5 in small ball lineups, and at one point in his career played point guard for the Spurs. Rough times, but it definitely showed his versatility. The reason why the Knicks landed him is because they were actually trying to trade for him at the deadline. That trade would have involved Yabusele, who had decided to forego his player option, doing the Knicks a huge favor, and was instead traded to the Bulls for Dalen Terry, who was in turn flipped by the Knicks for Pelicans guard Grand Theft Alvarado. This move put the Knicks first in line without putting Sohan on the market. Now early on, the Warriors were targeting Lonzo Ball, a player I've said for years would have been a great fit on this team. Back then, Lonzo was a 6'6" point guard who shot 40% from 3 while being his team's primary perimeter defender, capable of guarding 1 through 3 at an elite level. A lot has changed since then, including multiple injuries and him essentially missing 2 whole years of NBA basketball from 2022 to 2024. His play since then has fallen off significantly. Last season, in 35 games, he shot 34% from 3 and just 37% from the field. That performance is somewhat expected from someone coming off 2 years of injury. He was then traded to the Cavaliers where things got worse. In another 35 games, this time with the Cavs, Lonzo was shooting just 27% from 3 and struggling to stay above 30% from the field. What's actually impressive, however, is that the Cavs have been able to successfully manage his health by not playing him on back-to-backs and having him average 21 minutes per game. On top of that, he's averaging an improved 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1.3 steals per game. He's a solid complementary piece off the bench for a team that needs a perimeter defender on the second unit. News cycles, however, cited his health issues as being a problem, and the Warriors were seemingly turned off by this aspect. I'll be the first to say that could not possibly be true. The truth is much more straightforward and obvious. When Lonzo plays this season, the Cavs are 19-16. When he doesn't play, they're 15-5. The difference is monumental. The Cavs are barely over 500 with Lonzo, but without him, they'd be the first seed in the East with 41 wins. Kenny Atkinson realized they played much better without Lonzo, so they just sat him as much as possible after the fact. After looking into this and adding to the fact that Lonzo isn't exactly scoring the ball at a high clip, the Warriors likely realized that current Lonzo isn't anywhere near what he was before and is somewhat of a cross between Melton and Green. He's a better rebounder and playmaker than Melton, but Melton's a better scoring threat. If the team signed him, he would end up taking away minutes from either of the two I just mentioned, or Brandon Podziemski, something that simply will not happen on this roster anytime soon. If his performance on the Cavs is any indication, however, it's best the Warriors leave things as is anyway, as he'd struggle to find minutes, especially with Pat Spencer having signed a guaranteed contract. At least this was my initial thought. But if they're not going with Lonzo, where do the Warriors pivot?
Kristaps played today and was moving better than yesterday, and seemed to be in a good rhythm. I didn't see it, but the
5-on-5
coaches, I think it was half court.
Okay.
Still half court, but I believe it was 5s half court.
With 14 players signed, the last roster spot has to be intriguing enough to get the Warriors' interest. That's where the Warriors end up with a few more restrictions. As a team operating above the first apron, the Warriors are only able to sign a player if their original salary was below the non-taxpayer mid-level exception of $14.1 million. This means the Warriors still wouldn't be able to sign a number of the players on the buyout market that could feasibly help the team. These include Jusuf Nurkic, Klay Thompson, Chris Middleton, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and DeMar DeRozan. So with these guys out of the mix, what players are the highest value targets the Warriors could acquire? At the top of the list is Haywood Highsmith, who's been out for the entire season due to lingering knee injuries. Again, this is another point illustrating that the supposed injury issue with Lonzo is not exactly the problem for the Warriors. Highsmith, when healthy, gives you good perimeter defense off the bench while shooting 38% from deep and 45% from the field. While he's not grabbing as many rebounds as Lonzo, nor playmaking nearly as well, the fact that players will have to respect his shot and he's not a complete zero on offense makes him a more valued target. You can still make the argument that Lonzo has only played 70 games in the last year and a half, but his improvement year over year in rebounding and playmaking shows he's making his way back into the league, and at 27 years old, the potential is still there for him to get back to where he was pre-injury. If Highsmith is the bar at 29 years old, it might be worth the Warriors' while to make the low-risk move for Lonzo. The position is not a necessity, but if his shots start to fall, that changes the entire ballgame. Think about the difficulties Melton had at the beginning of the season, shooting just 21% from 3 in his first 11 games this season after not playing for a year. He's still struggling at only 30% from deep, but his activity on the other end of the floor, similar to Lonzo, still makes a huge difference in the games. Still, the Warriors might be able to help his career, even if it's just as insurance. Melton isn't guaranteed to stay on next season, as he might command a higher salary when the time comes for Porzingis to sign a new deal. If the Warriors can keep KP healthy, they most definitely can keep Lonzo healthy and in a position to help them either negotiate a salary with Melton or just let him go into free agency at the end of the season. Alternatively, they could go after a few other players that have yet to actually be bought out by their team. Amir Coffey of the Phoenix Suns is healthy but isn't exactly moving the needle. Matisse Thybulle of the Trailblazers, who's had trouble staying healthy, is available, but for obvious reasons isn't an immediate choice. D'Angelo Russell is healthy but hasn't played well in at least a few years. He'd be a good scoring and playmaking punch off the bench, but as of late, he's had some trouble hitting his shots. He's readily available as well. Outside of that, buyout candidates are simply being speculated. There's nothing concrete that would give the Warriors any sort of hope. Every player I've mentioned outside of the salary cap restrictions could potentially be a candidate to help the Warriors. While a couple of players like Russell Westbrook and currently available, those aren't exactly positions the Warriors are looking to fill. Kevon Looney is another name, but after how things went, I don't know that Looney would be happy to come back and play for the Warriors. Every player I've mentioned outside of the salary cap restrictions could potentially be a candidate to help the Warriors. Despite the relaxing of their stance on Lonzo, he's still the best opportunity available that could contribute now, fits under their salary, will fit under their salary for next season, as well as having the potential to do something more as an insurance policy. If he's a zero or negative, there's no reason to play him. The downside is that it would cost the Warriors $10 million in luxury taxes to sign him on top of the $2.3 million salary for a total of $12.3 million. That shouldn't matter, however, as they're either going all in to win with Curry or they're not. The bottom line is this: with Steph Curry still the star of the team, there's no reason why the Warriors should go into post-All-Star break without a full roster if there are players available that they can afford. This year and next year are crucial, with Jimmy still on the roster and Porzingis raising the ceiling to allow the Warriors to punch above their weight this year and next. But let me know your thoughts on the market and who you'd select as the best fit for the Warriors. Should they risk paying for Highsmith, who hasn't played a minute, Lonzo, who has played but doesn't seem to fit in with what they're doing in Cleveland, or someone else entirely? Post your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Till next time, swish.